Hey everybody, Matthew Smith from 5 to 1 here, and I am in the bowels of the beast. The engine room, the man cave, the mechanical room, where the power happens. This is a little bit different engine room than our last boat. If you remember, that boat actually had a walk-in, almost stand-up engine room. This boat is not a stand-up engine room whatsoever. It's comfortable. I'm sitting on my ass right now, and I can get on my knees, and I have plenty of room to move. But I am only on my knees, and so that's that can get tiresome, and also your knees start to hurt. So I have one of these little cushion things. It's called a kneeling pad. Well, it came with the boat, so otherwise I would have just bought knee pads because, they're so much easier. Anyway, so I thought I'd give you a little tour of the engine rooms now that you've seen the outside of the boat and everything that we've done there. We haven't done much with the engine room. There's really not much to do. I mean, I could paint. There's some boards in here that probably ought to be replaced, but nothing is absolutely critical. Everything works fine, and if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I'm not going to fix anything. Well, unless it breaks. So anyways, I'm going to take the camera, turn it around, and kind of give you a tour. So here we go.
We are Matt and Monique, parents to 5 beautiful daughters and 1 dashing son. With 5 of our children out of the house and on their own, I quit my job, sold our home and everything else we own to begin the adventure of a lifetime with our youngest daughter, Morgan, and her dog, Tito's. Our goal is to complete America's Great Loop, but first we must travel from California to Mexico and eventually to Florida. Join us as we travel down the coast of California and Mexico. We will see and explore new places and meet new people along the way and learn how to live as a family afloat, exploring both land and sea.
So over here on the port side, this box here is for the stabilizers from Westmar. It's a hydraulic tank and the hydraulic pump. The pump is right over there. And so that's what keeps the boat level as we are flying through the water. Over there we have transformers. That helps with dock power and converts electricity for our use. Moving aft on the port side, the starboard side, these are the battery banks for our inverter, which is an Outback. And as we move even further back, as we move farther back from our battery banks, that is the Outback inverter. It is a 3,000 watt inverter, and as I pan, that is our fuse box, Perco switches, so forth and so on. And on the side there is the solar controller for the Outback inverter. Then moving forward is one of our 2 generators. This generator is an Onan. It is 8 kilowatts, has 2,000 hours on it, so it's got a lot of life left. And then forward of the generator is the Detroit 453, and that is naturally aspirated, produces 112 horsepower. So you can see, even though it's not a stand-up engine room, there's a lot of room to move around that engine, unlike the other boat with the 6V92s. Even though it was a stand-up engine room, there was no room between the ceiling and the engine, so I couldn't get over. And as we move, sorry, I got to kind of jiggle my way back. As we move to the port side in the center of the boat, well, just ahead of the engine is one of our fuel tanks. It is our saddle tank, and then on the other side is the other saddle tank. God, they're huge. I think those are 3 gallons, 300 gallons a piece. So you're looking at 600 gallons of fuel just between those 2 engines. And between them, well, if you got fuel, you have to have a fire extinguisher. So there's our automatic Fireboy halogen fire extinguisher. You don't want to be in here when that goes off. Since we're on the subject of fuel and fuel tanks, let's pause this walkthrough for just a second. Below the Fireboy extinguisher here is the fuel manifold. The manifold is where we can select the tank to supply fuel to the engines. We have 4 different fuel tanks to choose from. The forward tank, which is the largest tank, holds 520 gallons. The saddle tanks that each hold 290 tanks have a total of 580 gallons of fuel, and the aft tank, which holds only 300 gallons of fuel. In all, we hold 1,400 gallons of fuel in 4 tanks. We also hold 300 gallons of water in 2 tanks aft of the engine room. These tanks feed the forward water tank, holding 120 gallons. In total, we have 420 gallons of water in 3 tanks. Finally, there is an 80-gallon waste tank just forward. Here is a schematic of all tankage and the capacity of each tank on this boat. Going back to the fuel manifold, just above the manifold to the left-hand side is a fuel pump that allows me to move fuel from one tank to another tank. And with one more step, I can use this pump to polish fuel as it's moved from one tank to another. Now, back to your regularly scheduled walkthrough. And then moving, or painting, over, I should say. All right, here we go. That is our port engine. Again, Detroit's 453s. We have Raycar filters. We've got oil filter. Here is the primary or the secondary fuel filter. All really easy to get out to, but that is going to be horrible because it's upside down. Nice little deal is I have a drain, so I can drain it before I take the fuel or the oil filter off. So that's good. Again, here's our Raycar fuel filters for the engine. I have the same exact one on the other side for the other engine. So as I was reviewing my video before publishing, I kind of realized that I didn't really give a good explanation of the type of engines this boat has. They are Detroit 453 naturally aspirated engines with 112 horsepower. You know, what does that really mean? Well, when you talk about Detroits, you have 2 numbers. You've got the first number and then the second number. In this case, the first number is 4, which indicates that there are 4 cylinders. The next number, 53, is the displacement of each cylinder. Typically, on some of the newer engines, there's a letter in between, say the 4 and the 53, and that might indicate the configuration of the engine. Again, 453, that's an inline 4-cylinder engine, each cylinder containing 53 cubic inches. In the other Hatteras, my other Hatteras, those were 6V92 TIs. That meant 6 cylinders, a V configuration, and each cylinder had 92 cubic inches with twin turbos. That kind of gives you an idea of the type of engines that you might be looking at. For example, during World War II, we used 471s or 671s, 671Ns, which would have been naturally aspirated. And then eventually in the 1960s, they came out with the 6V71, and those produced somewhere around 334 horsepower. What was interesting about these engines is they could actually spin that horsepower even further. For example, on my 6V92s, those engines had 435 horsepower per engine. Then in the late 80s, early 90s, Detroit spun those up to 550 horsepower per engine. And then I believe it was Penske or J&J spun them even further. I think the highest horsepower I've ever seen is 630 horsepower. So the Detroits were very, very versatile. The reason I like these engines is, number one, they're small. Number two, they're naturally aspirated. Number three, there's not an electrical device anywhere on this engine. No electronics whatsoever. So I would consider that boat or that engine bulletproof. It's not going to be stressed out by turbochargers or large injectors or anything like that. These engines ought to last a very long time. Meanwhile, a J&J 6V92 Ti or DDEC, that was Detroit Electronic Control at 630 horsepower. They go like a bat out of hell, but they're probably going to explode on you at some point. Nice thing about Detroit's is they're easy to rebuild. Parts are still accessible. The engine was actually built in 1935 throughout World War II, and the advancements continued all the way into the 1980s. In the 1990s, it was purchased. Detroit was purchased, and the MTUs were born out of that. So even though it's old technology, there are still parts available, and these are forever engines. So I thought I'd give you a little insight into the Detroit diesel engines. We have gauges here. These gauges are really cool because they're not electrical. They come off the engine, and so I'm going to get real readings from these. Here is a brake core filter for the other generator. And before I move aft to that, over here on the other side of the engine are the air conditioner units. There are 4 of them. There's one that's relatively new. That looks pretty good, and the others are older. Knock on wood, they work well. That round little thing there is for the water. It's the accumulation tank. Right there is the pump for fresh water. And each of the engines have 8D batteries. And that is right over there in the corner. Won't that be fun to change? All right. Alright, so I've moved around so I can get a couple of shots of some interesting things. So, okay, more light. That is our Glendinning for the throttles. That keeps the engines running at the same RPM. And it works great. It looks old, but it is in really good working order. Over there along the walls are the electrical panels for the air conditioners. There's the 8D and some storage. It's electrical stuff, electrical tools and stuff like that. I've got to go through all these totes and take out the stuff that I don't want. Coming after that, which is after the engines, there's the port engine. After that is our Northern Lights generator, and that's a 12 kW with about 700 hours on it. And that's what it looks like inside, and it runs very well, but of course it only has 700 hours. It's the newest thing on the boat, I think. Over there in the corner is our hydraulic cylinder for the steering. And more electrical stuff our 40 amp charger that is specifically for the 8D batteries, the starting batteries, and another side for Perco switches, remote start for the Northern Lights generator. On this side, coming back over the other side, which I wasn't able to get a picture of. So here is our HC1000 water maker. Produces theoretically 40 gallons an hour. Down below that is the high pressure pump. And above on the ceiling are the membranes. Two membranes, there are two cases for membranes. They're approximately 3 feet long each. So it's a pretty big water maker. On the other side, when you come through the hatch here, those are the water tanks, and then the filters are on the other side. So we can produce quite a bit of water just as soon as I figure out how to use it. And that's the next thing on my list to do. So the water maker was pickled by the farmer owner, and I haven't touched the water maker at all, but over the next couple of weeks, I am going to unleash that water maker and figure out how it works. So that is a walkthrough of our very small engine room, holding a lot of equipment, and equipment that we're going to depend on trying to get all the way to Florida on this boat. So if you like this video, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you're not already a subscriber and you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you will know when we come out with our next video. I am not on any schedule yet. I hope to be on a schedule as soon as we leave this dock for good. Until then, we'll show you some of the beautiful surroundings of Ensenada and incredible restaurants and the people. We absolutely are enjoying our stay here in Ensenada. The people are fantastic. The city is incredible, and I would really like to be able to share that with you. So until next time, keep your boat afloat. And remember, if you do things right, today is the yesterday that you will be embarrassed about tomorrow. So take care. We'll talk to you next week. Ciao.